This is the site of the first creamy that was in Butler's Bridge. It came here in 1889. It was owned by an English company called Lonsdale, and this is recorded in Paddy Leddy's book, and the information was collected by the children in Butler's Bridge School by Mr. Smith, Phil Smith, the teacher, and the first manager was a Mr. Condren. He came from Limerick, and he stayed up with Mickey Connery's up on the rocks. And they would take the cream from here and bring it in, I presume, by horse and cart to the railway station in Cavan, and it was brought. It was sent to Longford. Apparently they had a central depot in Longford. And that continued until the cooperative movement. The cooperative movement started then around 1895 or 1897, or some of those years. And there was an awful scramble to try and get a central creamy for this area. And there was meetings held in the Derry Garrett. There was a family called Teevens down at Kilnablair. There were meetings held in several places. And unfortunately, Butler's Bridge didn't succeed in getting it. And Ballyhale succeeded in getting it just over the bridge for it's all in ruins now. There was a mill house there, and there's a couple of good spring wells there, and at the river. And for some reason it was preferred over the bridge. So the creamy continued here until 1930. And then we'll talk about it later. In 1934, I think it was opened down on the Thomas Road with Mr. Gaffney, Pat Gaffney, Porrick's granddad. There's Porrick. As Porrick's granddad was the first creamy manager. There were other creamies in the area down in a place called Nahilla. It's in by Brian McEntee's home, and there's another one down at Orney. And the one at Orney is of interest, special interest, because of the fact that farmers used to send their milk to the creamy on boats up in creamy cans up along the riverbank. And so it was just an extraordinary way of bringing the milk to the Orney. Orney was a kind of a. We'll talk about it in a minute or later on. Orney was a village in itself. Like it had a creamery, it had a church, it had a graveyard, it had a schoolhouse. It had all the ingredients of a village except for the post office. But it had that special little flavour in the creamy, in that milk was brought up via the water. Next door to here we had the carnivals. There was a carnival here in 1961, the first carnival that came to the village, and it was an exciting time for all the young fellas. Probably more exciting for the adults, but it was exciting for us, the adults, and the youngsters. And we have a list of all the different bands that played in the book and all that. And there were side amusements like the swinging chairs and all the rest of it. And the next carnival was the tent, I think, was blown down on the night. There was a night in September, and the tent was blown down. And I'm not sure whether actually the first night was held here in the marquee or in the hall. But as youngsters, the football team put up the marquee. It was a huge marquee, and there was unbelievable excitement when it came to the bridge. It was on the Clonus Road in 1962, and then there was two carnivals, I think, on the late Nancy Riley, Lord of Merchant, on her house is the 1971 and 72 carnivals were held in that. And I think for the houses in Annalee Park are built now was where the third carnival was. So if we just move over here to the entrance to this car park. I want to come in a bit close, we go out. The next point here I'm going to make isn't we're in the area of conjecture again. We found out, well, I found out when we were doing the book anyway, that the Anglo-Celt on the 21st of December 1847, it said that there were 4 adults and 85 children were sent out here by the workhouse in Cavan town during the famine. There were 4 adults and 85 children, and they were sent out to a house with a wardsman. And a month later, on the 4th of January 1848, there was accommodation made for 60 more children at a house taken from them in Butler's Bridge. Now, I've asked I asked Mrs. Duffy, Lord of Mercier, Mary's mother, and I asked Andrew Boylan and Eugene Wilson and Norby and anyone, Lizzie and Harry, and I asked as many as I could, and nobody can ever hear anyone ever mentioning that there was a workhouse in the village. And the general consensus is that this is probably where it was, because the wall of that building there goes to the very end of the car park there, and the building actually came out as far as that pier. And there was a two-storey building there with a gable end to the road there until about the mid-40s. And whether there was some shame about the famine period, or why people didn't talk about it, but I mean, it's recorded that there was a workhouse in Butler's Bridge, and that these children were transferred to it in December of 47 and in January of 48. It's there in black and white. I actually saw I went up to the minutes myself in the library. And another little twist to it is that in 1849 it was still here, because there was a court case taken against some of the people in control of the workhouse for fraud. Apparently they were claiming food for children that had already passed away. And the wardsman, they were brought in front of a tribunal, all these local Lord Farnhams and the guy in Sardone Burrows, they were all on this tribunal. And they were charged with the deficit, the difference in what they were charging for, and they succeeded in their challenge. So there was a wee bit of enterprise going on even in the worst of times. So if you don't mind now, we move to the riverbank. We're not sure of this now, but it's just conjecture. But we know of no other place. The only single thing against it is that Mr. Riley here, the local landlord and the local bigwig, that he would have allowed a place with such disease to be so close to him. You know, that's the only, and it's a big thing. It's a big negative, because I don't know that he'd allow that amount of children and all the disease that will be attendant with it so close to his family and everything else. But we can, unless somebody comes up with a better place, I can't think of any other place. We'll just go next door here, please.
What?
Yeah, look. Yeah, just down here. Next part here is the river itself. In all the maps around the 1800s, unfortunately, our bridge was always referred to as the Ballyhays River, which is quite annoying. It wasn't called the Butler's Bridge River, but it was known as the Ballyhays, and the spell Ballyhays, B-A-L-L-Y-H-A-Y-S. And other places it's referred to as Aenab Lea. The Irish, and in Irish translated it means the Marsh of the Calves. And behind us here we have Mulligan's Hill. I don't think we can see it now with all the trees, but that was previously known as McCarran's Hill, and I suspect before that it was known as Riley's Hill, because they were the prominent people, as we already have mentioned. So the Ballyhays River is what we're crossing, but we now know it, thankfully, as the Annandale, and the Bible way to be the Butler's Bridge River. So we'll just go over to the bridge itself now.